you would think that if there's a matrix, there's also a patrix, right? Like pattern, like paternal, like father, patriarchy,
right,
as opposed to mother. So it's almost as though matrix transcends and includes patterns, which is the basis for what one might call a paternix, right? Or a patrix. And that's interesting. At the end of the day, we're all enacting patterns in our lives. But do we have a full understanding of the context, the womb, the matrix in which all those patterns are existing?
I don't think so.
I don't know. That's why you have to proceed by inquiry.
I mean, I saw Sophia say in another interview that as soon as someone's born, someone dies, and we don't really need to kill anybody.
Yes.
Everything balances itself out. We have cataclysms, we have hurricanes, tornadoes, other things that...
I saw the first part of that as well. I kept listening on in Too Real for TV, and she kind of meanders into some of that similar content that Nick Cannon and Professor Griff were getting into on that
Yeah,
show.
I'd love to probe around that.
Yeah.
You know, because I heard two different things. You know, one is that there is no such thing as races. We just have different tribes.
Right.
But then at the same time, she talks about, you know, in her creation, the cast of the Matrix would all be black.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't think I saw like a big follow-up discussion on why that was exactly.
Right. I mean, she did mention that, like, you know, that she was always thinking of the computer oppression in the form of the agents as whites. So I think that there is some kind of Black Hebrew Israelite sort of tropology there.
Yeah.
That she is sort of referring to, and maybe that wasn't initially intended. Maybe it's sort of gleaned over time in her conviction. But I mean, I
would not put it past Hollywood to steal a genius work from a black woman and to discriminate against.
I mean, look at what they did in M. Night Shyamalan in The Village.
Right.
Ripped off Running Out of Time.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And he had to settle.
Oh, wow.
It was proven.
Wow.
Yeah. It was too similar of a plot and a context and a milieu. And he, of course, had access to it because it was a widely published children's book. So, you know, that's an example where, I mean, and there's dozens of them, but that's the first one that kind of actually was suggested to me. So I was thinking, you know, how many more of those instances are there?
Right.
You know, probably dozens. And it, you know, it goes to show, like,
of the ones that exist, a minority percentage of those are provable, and then a minority of those are actually proven, I'm sure.
Or, yeah, it's settlable, exactly. Right. That can't be appealed, you know, into infinity by the army of lawyers that are employed by Hollywood.
Yep.
And I think that's another matrix there. You know, Hollywood has an inside angle on how they're able to defend their appropriation of any number of different contents and from any number of different creations. So I think it's a fascinating topic because it gets into, like, maybe even one area where blockchain could really excel, where there wouldn't be these kind of disputes and they couldn't, you know, rip people off as easily if there was a provable, transparent, universally scrutable method to see copyrighted entries. And,
right.
You know, maybe that's where NFTs go.
There's just so much subjectivity in this realm of art when you look across music, literature, film, there are so many common themes, and we are all humans, so we're all influenced by each other and past works, and it's a fine line, right, between inspiration, plagiarism, and mimicry.
Yes, and it's kind of like we get this aphorism or this saying that imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. Right. And so in a way, you see this in music, of course, where composers stand on the shoulders of giants and comb the hair of the previous themes that are there available to them.
Well, I've brought up Michael Jackson many times in the past, and of course everybody regards him as like a very original artist, genius.
Oh yeah.
But even he admits, that he didn't rip off, but he did imitate certain other dancers who came before him. Sure. Specifically Fred Astaire, Sammy Davis, Jr., and the far less successful commercially street dancers of New York City,
right?
Who were doing popping and locking, and there's another gentleman who did the moonwalk way earlier,
before,
right? But he integrated it, adapted it, and made it sort of his own thing.
Yeah.
And how many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars did he make off of moonwalk merchandise and this and that?
Right.
Are those people who inspired him and even, you could argue, came up with the move? Are they, does he owe them something? And then you have the case where Michael bought all these Beatles copyrights and stuff. Like, is that right? Is that just?
Right.
They're the original.
Well, but do you remember who he bought it from?
Sony. It was Sony.
It was Sony? Okay. But didn't Sony acquire that from...
It was...
Adorno? Wasn't it Theodore Adorno?
I don't know that.
Because that is a little hidden gem within the rise of the Frankfurt School, is that Theodore Adorno was one of the bigger contributors. He happened to be a kind of a master's thesis level composer, musician. He had perfect pitch. He knew how to play 3 different instruments. So, and he had classical training. So he knew how to compose. He knew, chords and theory and melody and all that. So it's been rumored, with some interesting paper trail evidence, that perhaps he actually wrote a huge swath of the Beatles' material as part of the budding leftist culture war. And that the lyrics and the execution in public of the songs, the Beatles were adept enough to do that.
Yeah.
But actually, the architecture of the songs themselves could have been promulgated by someone with a more specifically ideological agenda,
right?
It's
but not necessarily with the same pop appeal as the Beatles.
Of course, you're not going to have one of these erudite Marxist theorists go on stage and sing these songs, but
I don't know the exact custody of the Beatles catalogs, as they call them, but I do think Sony at some point, for some reason, put them up for auction, and he was the highest bidder, and that was a big notorious thing. But that's an interesting side subject about copyright law in general, and intellectual property, and how it's handled here in the States versus other places in and of itself, and how we're going to deal with this. I mean, like, you bring up the crypto thing. I think that's a good point too. Is clearly, there has to be a way for people to make money off of their works, but there's just so many gray areas in how you regulate that and
totally
and execute on that.
And the disadvantage with NFTs is that it kind of gives an outsized privilege to people who already have a huge platform,
right?
Who already have a huge amount of resources to sell, quote unquote, their image or their works through this new platform. Whereas it other people who want to do the same thing, it would take them a long time, if ever, to catch up to that, the rapidity with which someone with the bigger platform is able to get their works out there through an NFT. So I see a lot of these kind of postings on social media where people are like, oh, should I turn my cat into an NFT and try to sell it for $100,000? It's like, yeah, you can try, but I mean, 99.9+% of NFTs that are ever going to be created are only ever probably going to be as valuable as the JPEG file that they are using to create such a thing. So
I've flipped a couple on Theta Drop.
Oh, nice.
I bought some like World Poker Tour thing because I had some like T-Fuel from watching theta.tv and just leaving it on, and I was like, what the hell, I'll just buy a couple of these things and then I can put them on the market and then sell them back for more T-Fuel, and then
boom,
put that back into the edge node operation we've got.
That's sweet.
I got a couple of the Mitch Liu, he's the CEO of Theta Labs. They did an NFT thing with you can win a poker token that he signed, and there were only 200 of them. I forget what the highest one that's been bid on, but it's tens of thousands of dollars.
All right.
I've got 2 of them.
Nice.
But if you redeem them, you can't flip the NFT. You have a certain period of time to redeem it to like actually get the poker token, or you can sell the NFT and then someone else can redeem them by that point. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, but a lot of these NFTs just are not mass consumption oriented. They're more early, more of a theoretical proof of concept that some people make substantial money on. I mean, kind of like the Bitcoin pizza type of thing. I mean, if you traced all the 10,000 Bitcoin that were transferred for that, like if you look at the people who touched that 10,000 Bitcoin, how are they doing now? It was theoretical then, but as technology and time progressed, I mean, that has become a very infamous example of how early adopters can really reap a reward from something that most people just can't even wrap their head around.
That's I mean, it's time is the great fortune teller to a great extent, and I think that there is a usable proof of concept with NFTs. I don't think it's just like these Bitcoin maxis scoff at it and say, oh, it's just glorified fad JPEGs. It's like, well, on the surface that you can reduce it to that, but ultimately Bitcoin, in 2011 was
people were saying the same thing.
People saying the same thing. So
like even less than a JPEG. A JPEG people can see it might contain some beautiful art, but the idea of a cryptocurrency was so lost on people back when the white paper came out. I mean,
And we've gone into several different possibilities as to the origins of Mr. Satoshi, and who that combination or a set of personas really is. But with the NFTs, it seems like that could really be sort of the future of speculative, scarcely distributed sort of collector items. Best baseball cards, Smurfs, Beanie Babies. These are all sort of IRL physical earlier iterations, but an NFT basically is a way to authenticate that process of hey, I've got one of these rare collectibles. So what if it's in a digital form? As long as you can store it, you can show that you have this rare collectible. I think that there's a lot of market potential for that.
Yeah, they're also talking about integrating them with ticketing platforms, live events. A good proof of concept, I thought, at least to demonstrate how it can provide a unique value to a viewer, was Theta. Even though we're going to laugh about this, they partnered with NASA and said if you watch the Mars rover lander live on Theta TV, you can win this, NFT that you know that only those viewers at that particular time would be issued. So if we don't even go on the NASA route for a minute and just take your favorite live performer,
Right.
you know, there might be a moment or something during a concert that, you know, like a favorite memory. And if you had the NFT ticket to get that, you might get an NFT of this 5-10 minute video clip, and you can then auction that, you know, live moment as a video, or sell it or trade it. And regardless of whether people, you know, naysayers and critics think it has any value, they're time and again, you know, why would anybody spend all this money on a baseball card? Well, it's not your thing, but it's someone's thing. So you better pay attention to.
I mean, some people flipping shoes.
All right.
You know, on eBay, like, oh, this one particular iteration of Air Jordans actually has a rare imperfection that makes it worth 100 times more than any other Air Jordan, you know. So we're auctioning off this pair of sneakers for, you know, $150,000.
It's insane.
I mean, it exists, and even more than that. Like, you know, LeBron's pair of sneakers or something sold for $2 million, or I mean, something outrageous. So,
and then you add charities into the whole fold, and
online galas. I mean, you bet.
Right.
Totally. So I mean, that's where I see any blockchain that's going to be able to accommodate NFTs as a way of authenticating unique contributions to the budding Web3 kind of environment will have market potential.
Right.
So, and, you know, I think Bitcoin has been sort of the bellwether to bring in a lot of this desire to monetize digital wealth creation, period. And there's many forms of digital wealth that can be proliferated. So,
yeah, and there's a whole Veritasium DeFi
discussion
as well.
Getting that patent acknowledgement is a pretty substantial development. It's, you know, almost going on 5 years since he launched the project. So, Reggie, it's it's another one of these proof of concepts that seems to have progressed onto a sort of next stage, which is good.
Well, he's sending notices out to so-called infringers.
You
know, and I don't know if that's being done in concert with the SEC or on his own accord through his lawyers or what, but it's going to make a lot of people in crypto industry have even more animus towards him than they may already have, you know, because he's a pretty controversial character for whatever reason, even though he seems like a genuine, intelligent person and has made some pretty impressive calls in the past. So we're 12 minutes in.
Cool.
We've been live streaming, a couple viewers on YouTube, but I don't know where Sophia is.
Has she gotten back with you? Did she know it was?
She knows.
Live?
Yeah, I mean, she has a calendar invite. I texted her a few minutes ago.
Well, you know, famous enigmatic creators and artists like this, sometimes they
and they're running on their own time.
I
know that she had a show before this one. That's what she told me anyways. And so it was butting up against that, but she said she was going to leave the other one early and join us to test. But at this point, we're almost 20 minutes late.
Well,
so
we can keep.
I think we can maybe just kick off
the
show and get going with Matrix as the word of the day. And
groovy.
And if she joins, she joins. If she doesn't, we'll just talk about her and everything else, I guess, at this juncture.
Yeah, hopefully she sends you something.
Yeah.
Sends you a ping.
We'll see.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to play our little intro here.
You're listening to the Zetetic News Cast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to episode 29 on December 30th, 2021 of the Zetetic News Cast. We're your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant, bringing you the latest and greatest information as we head into 2022. On our last episode of the year, this retrospective and prognosticating review, recap, open discussion. Let's start with the fact that our special guest has gone MIA. I was in close communication with Sophia Stewart earlier in the day, but she has not responded to me. We're 20 minutes after our go live time, and I don't know where she's at, so I hope she's all right. But we were going to have her on the show to sort of add some color to the discussion that we were planning to have on this last episode, which was really a mishmash of, looking back on, where we've come as an organization, Zetetic News Network, what has happened in 2021, and how we see things going forward into 2022. And for those of you who don't know who Sophia Stewart is, she's the alleged original creator, the creator of the Matrix and the Terminator franchises. This is something that she has claimed and taken to court. There was one or more lawsuits that she filed in federal court. She contacted the FBI. You can go to her website. I believe it's called truthaboutmatrix.com. And she's got legal documents there from her court filings and other what she calls evidence of the infringement against her copyright. I won't go too far into the bio unless she hops on the line with us.
Right. Yeah, we'd like to get her take.
Yeah,
sure.
I want her to sort of frame her own sort of presence on the show. I just learned about her story. It's not necessarily new news. Apparently, from her perspective, this was all kind of wrapped up back in 2014 with the court proceedings that she had. And from that point forward, she considers herself sort of like the official acknowledged copyright holder. However, she hasn't received any kind of settlement. She hasn't been awarded any kind of settlement other than some like attorney fees for and I haven't read all the documents yet fully, but I don't think she got anything more than just like some administrative fees and so on for one of the proceedings. But nevertheless, she has appeared on a number of different programs talking about, her perspective of the infringement, but also her viewpoints more broadly. And regardless of whether she is or is not the original creator and author of the like IP that was later adapted into these movies, her points of view are very interesting and thought-provoking, and I thought she would make a very good guest for our last episode for no other reason than to just underscore our tagline, put sort of like a punctuation mark on our year that we should be proceeding by inquiry. Don't, assume, or dismiss anything outright. Just listen to the individual present their case, look at the evidence, and consider, try to discern for yourself what you believe. And I was really looking forward to having her on, but I just don't see that happening at this point unless she reaches out
to confirm her appointment.
We did it all came together very like in the last 48 hours, and I know she had a show like right before this, so if she doesn't show at any point during this show,
you do a rain check.
We'll try to have her on another time. We were also, I've gotten but a Twitter agreement from Jordan Maxwell, and I'm in touch with his manager.
All right.
I missed their response to me over the holidays, and so we couldn't line him up for this show for scheduling reasons, because he has another standing show on Thursday.
Right.
But Jordan Maxwell has agreed to come on the Zetetic News Network and talk about the shape of the Earth, among many other things, because Jordan is, Sophia regards herself as a polymath. And I would say maybe Jordan is as well. I mean, he goes in so many different directions, and has a very wide experience and knowledge base that I think would really add to our discussions. But nevertheless, we'll proceed on, and I'm sure we're going to have a great show, even if Sophia doesn't join us, because we were planning to have her on to talk about the origins of the Matrix and her perspective of what they took from her, IP. Our word of the day for today is Matrix.
Right.
And I'm surprised we haven't actually used this word before. We have used the imagery. Episode, I think it's episode 6 or something. We named it the COVID, like the scripted rollout of societal reformation. And the image on our thumbnail was the one of if you can see in this thumbnail here, when Neo wakes up from his pod. Okay, we use that image as our thumbnail.
That's right.
And we talked about, what we're in the middle of and all that. And what was fascinating, I wasn't aware of the meaning of Matrix, but Sophia brought it to my attention in another interview that it means basically uterus or womb. And that is like in the movie, the imagery is like almost like a synthetic womb itself. And so that's almost like an allegory for being born in the flesh. I think that's Sophia's point. And she also mentioned, and I asked her about it when I spoke with her before we tried to set this up, she claims that she was not born with a birth certificate. And so she's truly a free soul. And so when I watched The Matrix, and I even joked with you about like the parallels and the symbolism of it. And I've made this joke, I really don't want a social security number. I don't want my kids to have one. I want them to be like the children of Zion, the ones born without the plug in the back of their head. And I found it very fascinating that she gets into Admiralty maritime law and the birth certificate, the straw man. It would only make sense that the true author, if she is that, would have that kind of unique perspective. And when I spoke with her on the phone, she went into why that was, and she's like, it wasn't that long ago that everybody was born without a birth certificate. And we just had that conversation on a recent episode.
Yes.
So I was like, man, this would be great to have her on, not just to talk about the, true or not allegations of IP infringement, but just broadly. It seemed like she had some pretty simpatico type viewpoints. But this meaning of the Matrix, isn't that interesting? How the Matrix has become this term for the system that we're in. But when you look at its root, it has to do with where we really came from, which is the mother's womb. And I also thought this will be my last point before I'd love to get your take on our word of the day and the guests that we had hoped to have on. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
I just lost my train of thought. But
Yeah, the Matrix. It's fascinating. I mean, I've used the phrase the pseudoscientific charlatanry matrix
right.
many times to describe the plausible deniability framework that scientific authorities use to, in their confidence game, assert things as settled science or consensus-based science that actually runs counter to the purpose of science, which is to constantly pursue falsification, come up with better hypotheses over and against present conclusions, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that it's, if you were to use that term in light of the rise of sort of pseudoscientific tyranny, I think that there's a parallel between that and, say, the birth pangs of the Antichrist, right? You know, going into the notion of a matrix and creating or birthing this system, this paradigm that ultimately seeks to enclose everyone else's consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like a recursive formation within consciousness itself, that it's something that we can't escape in a way.
I remember what I was going to bring up before I lost my train of thought, and the irony of the meaning of Matrix tying back to the womb of a mother, whilst the purported authors of the latest installation of the Matrix have become trannies, which it only seeks to upend the natural order of. So
Well, and
what's going on with that?
That's a fascinating little insight there, because you're right. I mean, is this sort of an unconscious desire amongst the creators who initially were men, and they actually realized, oh well, Matrix kind of means like womb, like maybe we secretly want to be kind of women, and this is where our passion is, and that's maybe where our creative outlet flowed from, possibly. Although if you see, have you seen the most recent installment, the Matrix Resurrections? They don't really take it. It's, I think the term non-binary is literally used in the script 4 or 5 times in the 4th installment.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is kind of a ideological departure from what you would think would be a maybe 180-degree transformation. They're looking really at a 360-degree departure from the initial, what they would call now binary framework of the Matrix, right? And there was an article that came out that kind of cited this, I would say, sort of queer theory revisionism of the initial works of the first installment of the Matrix as a preamble to an awakening of the trans experience. Yeah. So there's been an ideological sort of rewrite of a lot of the motifs and the configuration of the entire narrative and the symbology and everything. So in a way, if it was infringed in the first place on someone else's work, they did the best they could to basically disparage the origin. And that's true with the Terminator too. I mean, if you look at the most recent Terminator, the Arnold Terminator, who in the second one became a hero, is basically like a houseboy.
So
and the real hero is this like cyborg woman.
I've heard Alex Jones, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, I guess. I'm not defending Sophia,
Right.
but I'm just trying to, play with different ideas based on my understanding of human nature. And Shit, I lost my train of thought again. The
So with Alex, is he saying?
He talks about there are elites who will spend $10 million on a like a somebody who took a dump on a canvas,
right?
And they are trying to like make a ritual out of waste for ugly sake, and there's something like black magic about that,
right?
So I'm just taking that is a true thing that
Yeah.
happens, right?
Piss Christ.
Let's
and all
say
that, yeah.
Sophia's original work was a inspired sort of like vision, right? And Hollywood's like, shit, this is great. Let's make billions of dollars off of this. But she's like, you know, I want this and I want that, and they're like, I'm not going to give it to you. Let's say that's all true.
Right.
She claimed to me on the phone the other day that for iteration 4, Warner Brothers offered her $30 million. But she was like,
a lot of money.
You guys have made billions that, you know, from her perspective, much of it is owed to me and it hasn't been paid at all.
According to her.
So 30 million is an insult. Okay. And she said that they just didn't even come back with a counteroffer, basically, and we're like, well, we don't need your script,
right?
We'll just do it ourselves, and it'll be a hit anyways. And she's like, now look what happened. And I did check the box office. You know, they spent $120 million on it, and then box office $68 million. That's a flop. That's
a flop.
That's a major flop.
That's a major
and she's
flop.
like going on to me about how this has harmed Keanu's career. He's having to delay his John Wick next movie and this and that. And I'm like, listen, to be honest, I don't follow the Hollywood gyrations that closely, so I don't even know if what you're saying is true or not.
Right.
But it is interesting, and if it's true that, you know, like people are like, well, why would they lose money just instead of just paying her? And I'm like, well, one thing is they may not think they're going to lose money. They might think that they're going to make money, and then they'll win anyways because they didn't pay her what they. But the other side of it, going back to the Alex point, is sometimes maybe they just feel like making a mockery and like destroying a franchise.
Yep.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, the people at the top of this pyramid, $100 million down the drain, they don't care.
Right.
It's not that much money to them.
No.
It's hard for us to imagine that mindset, but there are people who have that. I mean, we're talking about people who would spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a grudge. They'll kick off wars for petty reasons, and thousands of totally innocent people within their pyramid structure will die thinking that they're fighting for something just. So I cannot put it past these Hollywood people to necessarily disenfranchise somebody like this. I just haven't read enough of her documents, original works. I actually haven't seen The Matrix in a long time. I haven't seen all the sequels. I did see Reloaded, I think, in the theater when it came out, but it's been such a long time. So I'm not, I find it very interesting and compelling. I wish she was able to join us and give us her take.
Well, you never know. She might get up with us at 11:26. Be like, oh, are you guys still streaming?
Or maybe Jordan Maxwell will join us.
Maxwell join us. I mean, from what I downloaded the Kindle app just to read The Third Eye. Okay, so I read The Third Eye. So it's like 45-page compendium of different outlines and different sort of general frameworks for a futuristic kind of sci-fi overcoming the oppressor type archetype narrative. The thing that it chagrins me to look at some of these documents and the correspondences between her and Warner Brothers in particular around the Matrix. It chagrins me to have to agree with some of their points, because they basically drive home the fact that there was no access to her material in the first place when it came to the Wachowski brothers. And there's no evidence to prove that they had access to this story. One. And two, the milieu, motif, and plot trajectory is entirely different.
Is it really?
It's entirely different. I mean, if you look at the Third Eye, it's very outer space, intergalactic warfare, alien, occupation-based. And there's really nothing like that in the Matrix. It's on Earth.
At least not in the first one.
Not in any of them. I mean, it's within the Earth and upon the Earth. And I think that it's virtual reality. It's not really space focused, and that's true of the Terminator too. As far as space goes within the Terminator series, it's intra-planetary with Skynet, but that's not a foreign occupying machine army coming in like, alien invasioning the planet. It's not that. So if you look at her characters, the plot arcs, the sort of outlines, there is a sort of very general motif of like the birthing of the one, or like the savior who's going to like kind of like John Connor.
But
roughly,
every Western narrative has a major
Yeah.
protagonist that tries to conquer his external world.
Right.
And that's it's almost in our DNA as a Westerner.
And the man versus machine motif goes back to Plato.
Right.
That goes back a long way, and in even more detail
But
epistemologically with
where
Descartes
there would be
and-
a definitive infringement, in my opinion, is if she could demonstrate actual access early. Like if she really did enter a contest that was hosted, put out by the Wachowskis, and then they, they didn't respond to her, and she had these other contacts within, she
if she's able to prove correspondence
Right.
between the Wachowskis and this another person, that
and I could say, can you prove correspondence for your high school sweetheart, in 1997,
right,
or 2003 or whatever,
right?
That if it was really back in the 80s and she was in these hallways, handing papers here and there, that's very hard to prove.
It is.
And
It is.
she claims to be an attorney and a paralegal by like not profession, but by like self-education, essentially. So I mean, it would be good to hear her perspective on that, because there are rules of evidence,
Sure.
in the court, and it would be interesting to hear, what exists that she finds admissible and that sort of thing. But
And in some of the other, back and forths, and it's interesting because if you read if you go online and get the downloadable sort of Kindle version of it, many of the actual pages of the quote unquote novel, it's really more of an outline. It are these correspondences with these companies and with these lawyers, and it's interesting because in a way she's sort of indirectly referencing the legal framework as the Matrix in which she's fighting, sort of,
Actually, I wanted to bring that up, right? Because her claim of like officialdom, of course, she has some like copyright registrations and stuff like that, but that's a different matter than proving an infringement, right?
Right.
Having a registration is not the same as proving an infringement.
Right.
You have to go. Okay, so she points to the Utah court. Well, it's interesting. We would point to the court, as the evidence should probably stand on its own. Like, is there a passage in the text that is like lifted word for word? Because that's how plagiarism was defined in all of my English classes and my literature classes.
Right.
Is, if it's word for word, I mean that unless you're citing something that's already public domain, is like maybe a common adage or a old wives' tale or something, that's different, right? But like if it's an original work and you've plagiarized it, there should be like citable, not just themes or gestalts, but actual like script,
Right. Or at least a very specific characterology that's
Right.
borrowed. and there, from what I've read, there's no name or mention of a specific interaction or character dynamic that would bring about a conclusive case for an infringement. From what I've read, now I don't know if there's any other extant documents or what have you, but from my sleuthing, it seems as though she feels sort of uncredited with maybe some early inklings or early hunches that maybe spurred on some of this creative work. But stylistically, aesthetically, technically, those movies are pretty standalone. You know, they're arguably a very small percentage of Hollywood works that demonstrate some modicum of originality. And while it's true that Hollywood absolutely has ripped off a lot of different artistic representations, and the artist or the original creator doesn't have the legal skills or the funds to muster against some of this expropriation, sometimes it's demonstrated that it's pretty explicit. Like in the pre-show, I don't know if most people heard this, but M. Night Shyamalan, The Village, is a de facto ripoff of the children's book Running Out of Time, and he had to settle. It was a pretty large settlement because she was able to prove that the entire milieu, context, plot arc, and characterology is extremely similar, and he only changed kind of superficial.
It's got to be shocking if you're a real creator and you come across a major production,
right?
That like you worked real hard to like get that published, and you made whatever. I'm assuming that Shyamalan made a lot more money off that movie than this author did of the book, right?
Sure.
So you know, I think that, she did get compensated.
Yeah.
So
there are plenty of instances in which Hollywood directors and sort of bigwig producers like to pick some low-hanging fruit out there to, spur up what looks like original content, because that's a chronic, recurring issue with Hollywood. Is lack of material, lack of fresh, creative dynamics, characterology, plot arcs, everything. Everything is just rehashed and recycled and reconfigured.
When I was speaking to Sophia on the phone, I mean, she was referring to the sequels of The Matrix and how they flopped. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not surprised, regardless of whether it was because they didn't use her script or not.
Right.
I mean, this is just... I almost don't see any Hollywood sequels out of protest, because why would I want to give my money to something that has burned the public so many times over a long period of time? And I was kind of writing off all of Hollywood, and she's like, well, not all of Hollywood, produces crap. There are people who produce good work, and I was like, oh, sure. And she mentioned some folks, but they were all like dead. And
like, less than 1%
she talked about
of the
Kubrick.
monies.
And I'm like, when was the last time Kubrick made a movie? Like, give me a break. But I mean, there are good creators and ones who are trying to use the medium to like bring enlightenment and understanding. I mean, I consider ourselves as that. I mean, we're not producing Hollywood films or anything, but
not yet.
They're definitely in there somewhere. But like by and large, the point I was making was Hollywood has made a bad drug habit out of destroying sequels, and
absolutely,
I think it must be. There's probably a ritualistic aspect to some of it. Like I said before, wanting to destroy good art. Because you're just so decadent and like filthy, and you just love to see, the plebs like show up to your shit, and you're like laughing, and you're, all the way to the bank. Oh my God, I can't believe that's so funny. It's like a joke to them. But then I think there's maybe legitimate attempts that just end up shit.
Right.
But then there's like, I think there's an ego aspect to it as well, because if you have a writer who creates this thing that's a huge hit, the writer gains an ego from that.
Sure.
They're like, oh, I have something here.
Right.
And so then they start bidding up the price of their work, and then they get into a pissing match with the studio, and the studio execs are the ones who write the checks, right? So they're like, nah, fuck you. Like, I'm not you think you made this? The studio made it,
right?
Like, that's
my money made it.
My money made it. Yours is not. It's not worth more than the paper it's printed on without our studio money. So they get into this pissing match, and then the sequel, they're fighting.
Right.
So you're not going to have a creative spirit when you have the writer and the rest of the production crew. But you know what Ren and Stimpy said about producers is that they pay the money so they can take credit for the work. So I thought that was a bit of truth in plain sight there in the cartoon world. But
and it is true that they would like to think that the preponderance of money directed at creative efforts by default makes it their creative effort, and that is problematic philosophically, right? From an aesthetic point of view. It's like, well, you, the producers, didn't go out and wrangle everything. It's
kind of like the reflected glory thing. Like, I don't have talent or artistry, but I have money.
Right.
So can we put this name? Can we put my name on it? I'll give you all the money you want to, like, explore your art. And of course, that's what. So one of Sophia's central arguments is that they have no trademarks. They have no copyrights. The Wachowskis to the Matrix, all they have are film credits. I have not looked into. I have not looked up all the
technical detail.
It is a technical detail. But it is an important one.
Yeah, that's
because truthfully, film credits are bullshit. She was right about that.
Yeah.
She was like, if you went to film school, and I told her that I did, she's like, film credits are bullshit. It could be somebody that brought coffee to the assistant director, or it could be somebody that had sex with him,
Sure.
Like, to get in a film credit. That means nothing, essentially.
Right.
So, proceed by inquiry. Check out her page. We'll have to rain check with her. I mean, we're
getting towards 10, right?
We're about an hour in.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
Let me play some music. We'll take a bio break.
Yeah.
And we'll be back. Right.
She probably didn't pay her lawyers that much money. Probably $100. So she probably kept $250,000 just for the asset. Which is, that's a decent little hustle there.
And she doesn't have lawyers. Pro se.
Pro se, so maybe she kept all of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a good hustle. If all she had to do was show up in court a few times and complain.
Right.
I mean, that's a good hustle. So I think it
Cole, he's my miracle child. So how does your miracle child...
Just relax, amigo. Want to talk? We'll talk. I'm a sucker for good conversation.
I don't want to talk to you. Now you bring in the television cameras in here now. Come on, bring it in.
Can't do that.
Why?
I don't deal with psychos. I put them away. I require the solace of the shadows and the dark of the night. Sunshine is my destroyer. There shall never be another dawn. such power, one could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them.
Instagram is a fucking anagram for grimacing.
Well, that was another thing I read about Sophia. She said Genesis is an anagram for
Is genius.
that's probably somebody else, but
This whole period of time, it's just us evolving.
Continuing our odyssey.
this is a good song to see if I can get my cosplay. Let me hear you over here.
Okay. I'm just gonna say, I really would love for there to be an aesthetic, artistic revival, musical revival in Miami where we really had a rebirth of the 80s synth
Oh yeah.
with all of the.
I don't know why people say the 80s music sucked. It was amazing.
No, it was.
It was incredible.
Oh. The sweep and the gestalt is just so epic
Yeah.
and pure. I'm a huge retro 80s, new retro wave, synth wave, also dungeon synth enthusiast. It's great.
Yeah, I've
stuff.
listened to some of your stuff over the campfire.
Yeah,
Very
cerebral.
emotional. I was gonna say cerebral was the first word, and then what did I just say? Emotional.
Emotional.
Both.
Yeah,
Both of those.
I've done some tinkering in the synth genre for sure. Would love to do more. So are you queuing up your?
I'm
your
trying
Agent
to.
Smith,
Yeah, I gotta find the actual clip. It's pretty funny because I was listening to Bob Seger, Like a Rock, before I went in.
Oh yeah,
Great song.
it's a good one.
It's like the date is off on my surveillance pin, so it's difficult to parse through. I'm just enjoying the tunes.
Me too.
Let's just chill on this episode. you know?
Hey, I mean, honestly, when it comes to seeking some respite amidst the Lovecraftian absurdity world all around us, I feel like it's increasingly necessary to find that
it's
restful
deserved.
abode and that.
I think it's deserved.
I think it's deserved too, because if you look at the Mega Singularities episode of 2020, I mean, we didn't outline every single facet of what was going to happen, but there was a couple eerie moments there in 2020 where we were like, are we just like uploading the script of stuff that's happening?
It felt weird like that, like
happen?
we were creating our own nightmare or something.
I guess that's like egregore magic, basically.
You know, and that brings up a good point that might hopefully parlay into this video I hope to play from my Costco adventure today. And that is how much we are attracting this experience to ourselves. These days, I go to the store excited about a confrontation. And that's probably a flaw of my personality. I shouldn't want that. It's not healthy, I don't think. It doesn't feel good. It's always something that I both dread and relish at the same time. It reminds me of when I was doing more corporate travel and the feeling leading up to going to the airports. And that's before all of this madness. I can't imagine what it's like now. I've seen this lady slapping this guy on the plane. I know worse has happened. We've talked about it before.
Right.
But now it's at the grocery store, and we talked about this.
We talked about this, man. Like all through 2020, all through this past year, we were like, look, this is an initiation ritual, and it's a hypnotic charade that knows no end, because it's about people's understanding of the importance of autonomy and sovereignty and individuation and
but
liberty.
It was obvious even before we were talking about it that they wanted to bring TSA type governance. They wanted to extend it from the airports to other venues.
Absolutely.
And we talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
Even before we launched
Right.
ZNN, you and I had many discussions about, man, we could do a whole episode just on TSA malfeasance, TSA ineptitude and incompetence, the scripted rollout of TSA post 9/11, and we were hoping to head off this encroachment into the grocery store, into the train station. And it was like, I thought it would be more incremental than it actually was, because we know that they work that way, successive approximation, bit by bit. But it seemed to all occur in 2020. And
it really was on the heels of a huge indignation awakening around Epstein. And I go back to the timeline there,
which
and
persists.
It continues, today. And the thing is so unfortunate about the Maxwell proceedings is she's now basically the fall person for the entire thing, and all all of the contacts through the Epstein estate that would be of interest internationally are sealed.
Right.
That was part of her bargain or whatever, and so nominally she gets 65 years. And excuse me, the non-guilty charge of enticement, I don't see how they were able to convince a jury that she wasn't guilty on those lines, because what do you call monetary and status mongering, power of suggestion?
Sucking George Clooney's dick.
Right. Like what? That is enticement. It may not be the traditional legal definitions of material.
You think you suck George Clooney's dick and are around Prince Andrew and are selling women to a blackmailing pedophile intelligence operative,
right?
And there's not enticement?
Come on.
At some juncture, you're not guilty of that?
Yeah. And again, the even despite the droves of data and exhibits and everything that were presented there, it still only represents a teeny little sliver of what was going on.
Right.
Teeny little sliver. And it's only in a very small window of time for when these particular charges were levied against very specific individuals. There's a massive extent that is not being talked about, and that is the intelligence operation and the corporate overlay amongst all of this, with the NGOs and the intellectuals through.
Sorry.
It's vast. I mean, the implications are still so vast that all these characters are still on the hook, and again, it's the matrix of the court system.
Yeah.
That is continuing to insulate true revelation from the masses, which is pretty much one of the main purposes of the courts, is to insulate genuine revelation of pertinent data to the public.
Yeah, and if y'all want just sort of like a crash course in that, the ineffectiveness of the U.S. court system, it's not just ineptitude, it's corruption.
It's blatant,
pure
deliberate omission.
And I'm not a
distortion and
Donald Trump
deception.
defender, but look at the election. How many courts were brought copious amounts of evidence of election fraud and declined to take the case on technicalities and other, color of law type tactics, dismissals. Whereas there was affidavits filed in Italian courts that indeed Leonardo Spa defense contractors intercepted satellite transmitted information which was counted in Argentina, for God's sakes. I don't know why. And other places like Spain, I think, that showed, that the vote was rigged. And even before that, in courts, software developers have testified the voting systems are rigged, can be rigged,
easily compromisable,
and are not like transparent.
Right?
Can do that in a camouflaged,
algorithmically deceptive manner.
Algorithmically deceptive manner.
Yeah.
And so that was known before 2020. It was known in 2016. It was known in 2012. It was known in 2008.
Yeah.
So the courts, courts. What are the courts? The justice system.
No, they're the gatekeeping industry.
They're the gatekeeping industry. The DOJ is running cover for, all sorts of operations. Take the employee discrimination cases with the vaccine mandate. So they put out this OSHA federal mandate, which is unprecedented and dictatorial in its overreach. Gets all these companies, the Global 500, which are in on that anyways. It gives cover for them to mandate their employees to do certain things, even though they haven't actually implemented the mandate yet. Meanwhile, people are being fired, losing their health insurance, including, say, multi-decades long pilots, and their families who are dependent on their health insurance, losing their insurance as well because they refuse to get vaccinated while they work probably 70 hours a week, doing, dressing up every damn day, for God's sakes, and working hellish hours, and they just get fired, but they don't have a legitimate case to bring against United Airlines because the DOJ is running cover for them. That's just one little facet.
Oh yeah,
it's just a little microcosm of the broader problem that we have.
The hospital networks.
And maybe if Sophia Stewart was able to come on, she would probably agree with that.
I would imagine
she probably would. She put, and then bring up an anecdote related to her.
Yeah. Well, and it's just so alarming the extent to which the normalization campaign continues to march forward despite basically damning evidence that should have ended this entire narrative and fraudulent coup months ago.
Yeah.
Perhaps even a year ago. There was already data to show that you're actually at risk of infection by over wearing the mask.
My wife brought up, and I didn't see it, but I believe her when she tells me that she saw some Twitter posts of people who are in industries where, I mean, they're wearing these things like 8 hours a day, at least, probably having sex at night, wearing them. But
Taking showers
it's
with
not
them.
just like a little acne here and there. We're talking about bruising.
Oh yeah,
Bruising.
scarring.
I most of my social interaction these days comes from my my ventures out into the public, like shopping, buying groceries for my family. We have a couple of classes for our kids, but other than that, my social life is pretty limited at this point. So my anecdotes come from Costco, unfortunately. But I just killed me to see this. I was getting one of those fruit smoothies after I checked out, and I saw this teenage girl wearing a shirt. She was double masked, and she was wearing a shirt that said coffee, mask, good vibes. And I was like, whoa,
Dear.
pro mask merchandise.
In the
like,
coffee shop, yeah.
Wow, coffee, mask, good vibes. Like, this is how people feel comfortable now. They've been frightened so...
She's forgetting one crucial ingredient there, and that's smartphone.
That's
Right.
a good point. Or CNN.
Right.
You know, and we were talking about this off the air during our break, but I mean, the mask has almost become a flag of your ideology and, you know, what kind of media you consume. At least that's how I see it. Granted, there are probably critically thinking, well-read people wearing a mask because they're in a coercive type of relationship with some organization and so on.
That they've internalized within themselves that they need to comply to.
But I'm contending with that. You're contending with that. You know, I know that your wife has talked to us about like different conventions and such that she wants to go to, and various requirements are being asked, and it's challenging everybody.
Submit your DNA in order to attend.
And in many ways, I feel like this episode is, I almost feel like we're like Groundhog's Day almost, from like, because I did listen to about half of our last episode of 2020.
Yes.
And it was great. It was very entertaining. I think that's episode 16.
Yeah.
And it was a retrospective and transition discussion.
Yep.
But I feel like a lot of the themes are
They're
the same.
Recapitulating.
They are.
But now that we have all this data of the absurdist psychological programming and the crowd formation metrics at this point, that they've now proven, and I've argued this in previous episodes, but actually the most major scientific discoveries in the 20th century were probably within the behavioral sciences, having to do with how to basically program consent from people by framing and creating contexts and circumstances where compliance was incentivized or deemed the height of responsibility or compassion or ethical awareness. And ultimately that is where the bulk of tyranny has arisen, is implementations and deployments of highly sophisticated behavioral scientific insights into public relations, social engineering, manufacturing of consent, and crowd formation, crowd control. And we see that today more than ever because despite all of the contrarian data, despite all of the damning conclusive evidence to suggest that every single facet of every single message of every single bureau, of every single broadcast through the mainline establishment has been rooted in some form of skullduggery, misrepresentation, or just blatant distortion through these, peanut gallery bureaucrats who are paraded around on TV every single day as some sort of authority because of their tenured, salaried, comfortable position of declaring policy. And we've talked about the Delphi method in previous episodes, and we see it on a Lovecraftian absurdist level at this point, because despite all of the glaring evidence, even though everything has been suppressed summarily and so meticulously and so exhaustively, there's inevitably data and points of view and perspectives that have reached past the veiled lining of people's daily existence, especially in some of these more quote unquote blue pill areas. The information is out there. I mean, anyone can pull it up at this point. That it shows contradiction after self-contradiction, after moving the goalposts, after just laundry list after laundry list of waffling and credibility crisis writ large across all of these different outlets. People, it's gone on long enough that there's still a habitual residue that is the exact kernel, the exact golden goose that all this behavioral engineering has been trying to create, and that is habitual residue. And that the people will now, because of all of this trauma bonding over the past nearly 2 years, there is now a more learned reflex to capitulate and acquiesce through habitual residue to illegitimate authority.
But if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, I mean, you might have been listening to Zetetic News back in February of 2020, where we predicted, not because of a crystal ball prognostication machine or anything, but because the writing was already on the wall, that they were getting ready to roll out a bunch of draconian restrictions, the likes of which nobody has ever seen, although they may have considered as possibilities when they looked at the degree to which, for example, their smartphone was tracking where they were going. So people have been accustomed to the idea that, yes, this data is being collected, but they have been under the delusion that, it's just for advertising and maybe capitalistic things that are a little bit creepy, but would not really restrict, for example, my movement. But someone shared on the Zetetic News Sleuth Telegram this article about the first night Raleigh event, the ball dropping, acorn dropping, city worshiping New Year's event in nearby jurisdiction in North Carolina, which will require either a COVID vaccine, which is pure fascism, to basically have the state mandate for your presence the purchasing of a corporate pharmacia drug, or a negative test, which is another financial boondoggle.
Yeah.
And potentially incriminating act. Who would take a test at this point? To me, a test is as abhorrent as a vaccine. And I will not take a test.
Same.
I will not. Not just because of the... we talked about nanodust.
Yeah.
That's a good flashback to a prior episode. We talked about nanodust and nanobots, nanobot technology, microdot, filament, luciferase, basically encoding information into a readable vaccine.
Yeah. Like
So
a barcode.
not only is that underpinning a concern about getting a multi-inch swab jabbed into my nasal cavity,
right next to your blood-brain barrier.
you also have the societal, legal implications of being positive, which is a dubious claim to begin with.
Exactly.
And has demonstrated that over and over after we said it would throughout 2021. The false positives, the false negatives, the promulgation of information related to the, invention of PCR and the CDC admissions. All of that has come out.
Yeah, it's all in plain view.
Why are we pretending anymore?
Well, because it's the habitual residue that they've ingrained into people's gray matter at this point. And that's what's so scary.
If they can be trained that quickly, I mean, it can be reversed. It must be.
Yes. However, you would need to have some kind of catalyzing, universally undeniable disclosure event to undo something like that. I mean, and that's exactly what they're trying to prevent.
Right.
And even though there's multiple angles of attack in closing in on them, which is actually going to produce this event, but this is why they're accelerating. This is why there's been an acceleration campaign so violently proliferated.
Well, we can only do what we're able as an individual, and that's what we hope to do with ZNN is encourage the public to proceed by inquiry and stand up for themselves. Nobody's going to stand up for your rights. Only you can do that. And that has been the question for a long time. The deeper question, though, is to what degree? To what degree do people stand up for their rights? And I've talked about licensure, social security numbers, the straw man. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole, but it's actually maybe a blessing in disguise. Everybody can very easily start to exercise their freedom muscles now in their everyday routine, because now you have an impetus every time you go to buy groceries to stand up for yourselves. Before COVID, to stand up for yourself, you had to go to like a rally. You had to, you could have conscientiously objected to like seatbelt laws and licensures, and there's a lot that's sort of white collar regulation that is hard. It's just like impossible to avoid. Sales tax, for example. How does a sovereign citizen protest the sales tax? Well, they go live on the land. They don't, and that's a lot to ask for a lot of people. And we don't have to resign to a society that is not going to just like go back to that, because I just don't think that's feasible. But it shouldn't stop us from complaining about the sales tax. If we can't, fully resist in that way, then the least we should be doing is complaining about it and talking about it and demanding that it be eliminated, if not lowered. Right. And that's just one little facet of the Matrix, which is highlighted really well in the first film. Taxes, everybody,
goes to church, you pay your taxes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And but yet something is amiss. Something's not quite altogether there. There's something missing. And ultimately, it is a matrix. They're birthing a kind of anti-human system with all this stuff and accelerating the move towards enshrining this kind of misanthropic mythology of, the death breath and, what's your status? And, it's a very anti-human system.
Well, since I've been off work for the Christmas holiday, we've spent a lot of time at the park, and I saw, you never know what kind of group is going to be at the park. They could be just thrilled to see someone not in a mask, or they will be terrified that your kids aren't in a mask. And we arrived today, and there was a group there, and their kids were playing on the play set, and the parents were somewhere else nearby. They were all everybody was masked. Of course, my kids aren't, and they start climbing the play set, and the father at a certain point of one of the boys who were already there started yelling at him, from a distance, "Hey, can you put the mask over your nostrils?" Like they're not, he's out there running around, on a thing, and it came down, and he was like nitpicking him about that, and the kid wasn't listening.
Right. So
he repeated himself a couple of times. Then he like ran over to interrupt him because he was like not responding.
Meanwhile, the quote unquote dad was he wearing one?
Yes.
Oh
no,
so
and I've seen that
compliant.
too.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh God, let the kid be. But it made me think, like, because you don't know what someone's motives are unless they tell them to you, right? Is he scared because my kids are unmasked and now his kid has his nostrils exposed, this kind of religion, or is it that he wants to be polite because, well, his kid is not fully compliant and he doesn't want anybody to think that he would be anything other than compliant? I just don't know, and I certainly don't care to ask. It was just a thing that happened. I observed it, and then these thoughts came into my head,
Well, see, and this is a very unique aspect to the whole social engineering regime, is they want to instill irrational confusion, but because it bypasses rational, logical comportment. So if people are afraid enough, they'll do all kinds of nonsensical things, and they won't know how to justify it upon scrutiny. So they'll just shoot the messenger and say, "How dare you question? You must be a miscreant." Right. Which miscreant was one of our Thursdays of
word of the day.
And it comes back around with these kind of interactions, because I find that people just have a very inchoate, ignorant understanding of the supposed biochemical justification in the sciences for these kind of things, and they just go along
it's
with,
not even up for discussion, right? For some people it's not, and I'm
regardless of how well researched you are in the matter.
Let's try to do this. I'm going to try to play a clip for you guys. If you're just listening on a podcast platform, you got to head over to Zetetic.news. Although the video here may not be very engaging, it's been shot with a surveillance pin. Maybe I'll post the link to that. Do an Amazon affiliate.
And the time is just because the camera.
I haven't set the time right, so the timestamp is not right. But maybe that's good for anonymity purposes, anyways.
Right.
But I went to Costco today. I had probably, besides getting kicked out of the Christmas tree farm, which I didn't have my surveillance pen for, the most contentious confrontation I had with anybody around a mask non-compliance issue. And I was there with my kids, and it was very apropos for today's episode because the word of the day is the Matrix,
right?
And I felt very much like Neo in that I had to believe in myself and my convictions to Jedi mind trick, get my way through the Matrix.
That's right.
The Matrix being Costco, who has the most, in my experience, draconian approach to mask mandates. So our jurisdiction,
compulsory stuff.
Our jurisdiction has a mask mandate Granted, it's a pretty soft one with a very nice, like, clear medical exemption in it. But Costco runs away with that, and you just never know who you're going to run into as far as, like, employees and what they think their duty is and how far they need to take that. And obviously, this is not going to be as maybe viral or extreme as some of the other videos out there where people are getting slapped or buckets of water dropped on them
or tackled.
I mean, thank God that didn't happen to me when I was there with my 2 young children. Right. But all I'm seeking to do here is catalog the malfeasance, the lack of good faith in the system that's been erected before our eyes. And like Eric B said on a prior show, this like invisible army just sort of like materialized out of nowhere, and all of a sudden Costco employees are Agent Smiths, and you know,
the customer walking next to you is Agent Jones.
Karen's in the next, you know, the self-checkout line, or like dirty Harry eyeballing you and maybe thinking about like breaking a bottle over your head. You just never know. So anyways, I'm going to try to skip through this. I don't know how good the audio is going to be, so this may or may not be a good clip, but I've been really, I'm working on like compiling a bunch of my surveillance pin footages of interactions that I think expose the illogicality, the lack of good faith practice, the malfeasance, the ignorance, the lack of regard for public right, all this stuff I want to catalog. I'm having issues with my editor, but I can play these clips on the show, and we'll see like what comes of it. But I'm going to try to skip around here, and maybe I'll get to show you some of the funny interactions I had with these people. That's my ZNN amulet of power, to use Xavier's words. Yeah. Which is the lanyard that basically says, you know, HIPAA provides a certain penalty for discrimination against those who have a medical condition. And that's really the basis for my exemption. When I go to the store, there's different approaches. Xavier's got his own approach from time to time. Although I think you're on the no mask side at this completely. Like, not, you used to wear like an invisible.
I used to wear basically a mockery mask that was completely transparent and
and we talked about that in the 1 year ago episode. We talked about that in episode 16.
But since I've kind of come to the conviction that I'm just going to boycott as many establishments.
Well, so here's a dilemma as this video plays out. Okay, we get to the critical moment. You know, we're expecting our third. Okay, so now we're going to the birth center. Okay. Yeah. Okay, you ready for this? What do you think they require?
The altar of Jabbo commitment.
They require it before labor. Oh, you don't have to wear it during labor. Oh my God. We're not going to go that far, but you got to wear it after. Oh, so you mean the immediate moments after my child is born and we get to see my face, I have to wear a mask?
Oh my God.
When I'm trying to recover after potentially 30 hours of labor and 2 hour or 1 hour of pushing potentially, I have to wear a mask and restrict my breathing, even though I've told you I have a medical condition that prevents me from restricting the airflow like that. So, we don't care. Well, I thought you were a medical professional. Do no harm. What's going on here? Well, and this is a hippy dippy granola birth center that's like Ida May birth industry, anti-birth industry supposedly. Right. But you know, they've always been very CDC obsessed.
Oh my God! And the CDC, I mean, cat has been so thoroughly discredited even before this. and then the credibility crisis has just gone into hyperdrive with all this stuff now. So not only do you have the reproducibility crisis of people, just the academic industrial complex just churning out credentialed morons into their respective fields,
Exactly.
with basically essay points, telling them they know this and they know that, and they now have an authority over any given person they meet around the topic. You also have their inability to reproduce the things that they're supposedly authorities of.
Yep.
And on top of that, you have a credibility crisis. So because no one takes these things seriously anymore, because there's documented evidence of self-contradiction from
Top to bottom.
Yeah,
from top to bottom.
So I mean, at this point, it's just a giant Lovecraftian Twilight Zone absurdist farce that has unfortunately created enough habitual residue as a result of the mass Stockholm syndrome trauma bonding that people are complying, even though deep down they know that there's no reason to.
It's not in their best interest.
Right.
And that's what I try to communicate if I get the opportunity, that this is not in my best interest. It's not in your best interest. If you have a concern and you believe in the efficacy, you can wear a mask.
Or you can...
Problem solved.
You can
I mean, it's like...
the prick or
this
whatever,
debate was ended...
long time ago.
Last year.
Yeah.
Last year.
And then now it's just this
reverberation. It's like an aftershock, almost like there was an earthquake. It happened in December 2019, January 2020. That earthquake happened, maybe the core seismograph, maybe it happened in November of 2019. But we've been just experiencing these aftershocks, and they do lessen, right? They're always, the spike is always highest at the earlier onset of it, right? But then it always dissipates. You might have one a little bit higher and a higher high, lower low, and all this stuff. But over time, and to me, that's Omicron. Omicron is the...
we talked about that in the last episode, right? Like, the last two variants, including the present one, you put them side by side, it means media control.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so obvious.
And Omicron on its own
is moronic.
It's moronic. Yeah. Moronic.
I do notice that Alex Jones pronounces it Omnicron, just like he does the whole George W. Bush nuclear. It's like
such a Texan.
Like, it's a Greek letter of the alphabet, my man. It's not Omni. Omicron.
He makes a bunch of funny mispronunciations.
It's so, I know, like Goth. I've even noticed Eric Dubé mispronounced that one. It is Johann Wolfgang Goethe. It's a German pronunciation. O-E-T-H-E.
I probably would have got that one wrong. I was the guy in 6th grade who was asked to read a passage out of Elie Wiesel's Night in front of the 6th grade class, and I pronounced it...
Weasel.
No, Nazi.
Oh, Nazi.
Yeah, I had never heard Nazi said before. I was Nazi. Fucking
awesome.
Idiot.
No,
I was so ashamed, dude.
That's hilarious. It's honestly
I went home
hilarious.
depressed that day.
That's honestly hilarious. Though.
Yeah, it's true though.
Like looking back, it's like,
Nazi.
Man, maybe I should only.
Hey, you motherfuckers told me to sound it out.
Exactly.
Nazi. I'm just doing what you said.
It's like, well, wait a second. That's a compound abbreviation. That's not what they call themselves, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm here. I think I'm about to enter into the warehouse. Welcome to Costco. We love you. And I'm about to approach the very low IQ card clerk who I am used to flashing my member card to for entry. And they've been training us. They have been training us for this.
For years.
Generations
now.
And some people actually, I respect, conscientiously object to the Costco Sam's Club model of showing a member card to show up and pay you money to buy the goods.
Right.
I get Costco's perspective as well, and it is their right to implement membership protocols. You don't have to frequent it though if you object to it. But I like the deals.
Right.
But I also recognize the social engineering. So I've seen this
Right.
coming for a long time. We've talked about Idiocracy and their allusions to the Costco, the future of commerce, right? I get it. But at what point do these people taking your card wear a government certified badge? And we've talked
Absolutely.
about TSA, like we talked about before, extending beyond the airport, which why are they there anyways? Why are they? Okay, that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
But it's the successive approximation towards that end state.
And there's no relinquishment of so-called temporary infringements, right? Because the TSA was supposed to be temporary.
Yep.
And they're still freaking there.
Yep.
So it's power never relinquishes itself once it's bought.
Never.
I mean,
never. Once they get people agreeing to
Yeah.
showing their card and their receipt on exit,
Right.
then they can just add on top of that.
And this
they
is
can
why
just add on top of
the
that.
habitual residue is so disconcerting.
It is.
Because you know that now the prickishly ominous specter is going to replace the muzzle, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah. And so like I go through the card line. And, people, it's okay, it's cool, it's no big deal. Nobody gives me trouble. I just show my card. I may even have someone else's card they let me in.
right.
That's step one, guys.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. And I actually had the thought today. I've never, ever had a discrepancy on the receipt. Have you been to Costco and seen how these people act when they look at your receipt? They're acting. They're
Yeah.
not counting what's in your cart. They see 1,000 people a day.
Absolutely.
You know, they always pretend to look at your cart and pretend to look at your receipt, and then they give you a highlight across it to make you and it's just security theater to prevent people from trying to steal.
Pre-social credit
Stealing
score.
still happens
Absolutely.
all the time.
So easy.
It's probably less at Costco than it is at Walmart.
Right.
But that's the point of the social engineering, is
Right.
to create a
You're
psychological
guilty until proven
barrier.
innocent.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
So I've always objected to that, but whatever. I want the big deals. I want to buy the steak at the low price. Okay.
Well, and then it's like that guilty until proven innocent framework is now easily projected in the form of sick or unwell.
Well, here's the thing.
Until proven
This is
according
my.
to legitimate authority.
I
that
think
it's
we're on the
thing.
same frequency. Okay.
Yeah.
The foundation has been built.
Yeah.
So this card thing, it's trivial now. It has been
Right.
trivial. You get your cards. You either have a member card or a credit card. That's a member card. That's even easier. Cool. But then everything gets built on the foundation. So the foundation is there. Now the house is going to be erected.
Mm-hmm.
And what I went through today is a precursor to that. It is a window, a crystal ball into that, because what hopefully I can play. The clip may not work out. I might have to come back and edit this after the fact. But basically, I was accosted at the front. I declined and resisted. I went in despite what was being asked of me. I was then intercepted by managers and resisted that, proceeded to shop unmasked, but then got to the register and got 75% through before somebody showed up with a radio to tell the cashier something I couldn't discern.
Whisper.
It was behind plexiglass, so I couldn't hear it, and neither could my surveillance pin, I'm sure. But it appeared to me that either the cashier was being reprimanded or was being told not to serve me, but was already so far through the process that she wasn't going to do that.
Right.
And I was allowed to proceed through unmolested out to get my receipt checked. But the next step, and this is the first time this has happened like this, but the next step will be I'm either escorted out, which is already happening everywhere,
Yeah.
or I'm prevented from checkout, or I get through checkout and then I am prevented from leaving the store with my goods.
Unless you don the compliance apparel.
And
right?
I pretend and I play costume.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me see if the audio can come through here and you can make out what was said with the card clerk here.
Yeah. Hi. No, I don't need one thing. Yes. High traffic area, sir. I can't though. I talked to the manager before. I have a private capacity run something. No, I can't. I'm Jewish. Alright, you're gonna step right over here. No. I'm gonna call the manager for you. I already talked to the manager, so. Alright, yeah. I'm right here. That's a good one.
Funny, dude. That's so funny that you use that one, man. That's hilarious.
So
you're proceeding through the story. I mean,
yeah.
It worked in a way.
So I recognize the so I recognize the card clerk as someone I've encountered. I've been a member for 10 years. So I know this lady. I've checked out with her many times. I don't say this with any glee or excitement, but she's low IQ.
Sure.
And I thought, I've seen some videos of somebody who were accosted about the mask, and they're like, I'm Muslim.
Sure.
And I was like, shit, why not? I'll just throw this out there.
I'll just throw this out there.
I'm Jewish.
Sure.
I'm Jewish.
Why
so
not?
I thought I'll have a little fun with her. I figured, she would just like be whatever. What is,
She's just doing her job.
But unfortunately, and this is my point of view, she's so low IQ, she doesn't know any nuance beyond the script that she's been given.
Of course.
So you heard her. She said,
high traffic area, you are death breath.
And she presented the mask and the visor. I told her I couldn't wear either one, and I gave her the reason I was Jewish. She didn't even pause. You probably didn't hear it in the audio, but what she told me was to stand over here and wait for a manager, and I told her that I have already spoken to a manager. And that's true. I had a conversation. I have it recorded. I haven't uploaded it, but I could, of a manager that I spoke with months ago, back in June, when the county rolled out the mandate to basically clarify the issue. And he told me at the time, the county says this, yes, they have a medical exemption, and we're respecting that. And so if you have one, then, and so they're
not allowed to ask papers, please.
That is in the mandate. That is in the county. I can bring it up on screen if we need to, but I've been shopping at Costco other than the card person, giving me a little bit of hustle bustle. No problem until today. And you saw, I kind of set her off. And she was like, I just walked. You saw, I just walked away.
Just keep going.
And
what are they gonna do? Grapple you?
So what happens? So I just keep walking.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's see. I know it's a bit later. I might have to open another clip. I've cropped the video because my kids' faces are in it, and I don't want anybody to kidnap them. Yeah, it's probably in another clip, but later on I get accosted by some managers, and I'll see if I can pull that up. Offering me the mask.
Well, I mean, I had an interaction that was similar to this, except it was a small little co-op grocer that I actually used to work at, and they are so anal about this compliance protocol over there that I went in there and I have the amulet of power on and I have 2 items that I'm checking out. It's literally like nothing, and they literally said, oh, you have to at least put on the mask at the checkout while you're paying. before you can walk out of the store.
That's just what I was just talking about. And you know, different companies have different levels of implementation of the same agenda, but we can see this materializing where you're going to have gated groceries.
Absolutely.
This is why independent farming
is so
self-sufficiency is
freaking crucial. I mean, it's now becoming a necessity almost. I mean, like any basic person now has to really think about, oh shit, like what do I eat? Like what are the bare bones basics that I really need? I need to be freaking growing that on an industrial scale as quickly as possible. At least teaming up with a farmer and being able to pay them directly, who, you know, as long as it's a based farmer who doesn't have the habitual residue of all this Lovecraftian magic. I mean,
maybe
if they don't care, you know, then
get into trading, bartering, develop a skill.
That's right.
Whatever,
because they have centralized through the Codex Alimentarius the food supply, and that is something that they've meticulously done through the Kissingerian policy of you control the food, you control the people. You know, that's been a deliberate program for since the 60s.
Yeah,
you know, at least, and this is on again a worldwide scale, not just national scale. So you know the big agribusinesses and the big, you know, store conglomerates, they work in tandem to essentially create a supply bottleneck and a distribution bottleneck to the public around all of these goods that have been sold to them as necessities through the American Dream industrial complex, essentially.
Right.
And through the Bernaysian paradigm of basically presenting people the benefit and the comforts of various things, they're able to essentially craft an avatar of which they can then logarithmically predict over time and create a sort of dependency feedback loop. And that's literally the domestication program that has been rolled out, that literally it's nearly impossible to extricate yourself from it fully, unless you got your own energy, you got your own water, you've got your own food, you've got your own shelter, completely self-sufficient and remote. That's less than 0.0001% of the population now. Right. I mean, even
rare.
Super rare. I mean,
even the people with means.
Yes, right.
You know, you're talking about billionaires. Even the billionaires are dependent.
Absolutely.
Highly dependent
on this system.
No doubt about it. All the modern conveniences and stuff, people have just, that culture of self-sufficiency is gone.
And think about this. If we're accurate in showing on the charts a potential cataclysmic black swan reduction in the values of all these indices, that would ripple effect through the entire worldwide economy. It would make the Great Depression literally look like a teeny little blip on the chart.
Which is probably how they look at it.
This is probably how they look at it. And
just a building block.
Back then, you had just the entire starvation travesty of the Dust Bowl, but back then nearly 8%, almost 10% of the population was involved in agriculture and had essentially a self-sufficiency mentality.
And they were regarded. They were highly regarded.
Highly respected.
Whereas now they are derided
and vilified and pushed at the margins of society. So what do these people owe this collapsing system?
Yeah, and you look at the clientele at Costco.
Oof.
And what respect do they have for the local farmer?
Zero.
I mean, none, because none of what they're consuming has anything to do with what they are, what is produced around them.
I mean, you ask most urban kids today, where does food come from? They'll say the grocery store. They don't know where food comes from.
Right.
So you are in this situation of, a sort of hyper domestication, learned helplessness, Codex Alimentarius, hyper centralization paradigm, where people won't know what to do other than beg their so-called authorities for gibs in the event of any of these planned fallouts that they have forecasted. So, you know, and it's been suggested that really the shelves are only stocked with 72 hours worth of goods, and that the entire global economy
sounds like a movie script waiting to happen.
It's absolutely this is a like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah,
right. I mean, at the end of the day, do people really have a sort of
well, what's even scarier than that is, like, okay, that's the reality. So you would think the smart ones would be like, oh shit, let me get ready for anything that might happen, like a hurricane, for example, if you live in a hurricane path, which we do.
Nope.
So, but I know locals who think my level of preparedness is crazy and have thought this for many, many years. And I'm like, you don't have to believe in weather warfare, high altitude stratospheric aerosol injections, or deep underground electromagnetic ultra low frequency waves that are causing tectonic slippage resulting in earthquakes, or subterranean nuclear weapons. You don't have to believe in any of that to be ready for a couple of weeks of power outage. You idiot. You know? So it's scary to see, not just that, like, people would be ignorant of the need, but they will actually deride those who are preparing for said need.
Right.
You know?
I mean, part of me is very I don't know how on heightened awareness of the idea of because they did do that little hiccup around fuel in 2020 on the East Coast.
Yep.
Where they were like, oh no, the gas stations don't have any fuel anymore.
At any point,
you know,
think about the ramifications of a deep sea cable split,
right,
for internet communication,
because that's where all the communications are. They're not in Starlink.
Forget about the
satellites
ships
and crap.
Forget about the ships in the Suez Canal. Forget about them.
Right.
None of them can move anywhere if the internet is cut off. And that's just like, you know, internet is one thing, electricity is another thing.
That's right.
And it's just like, yeah, for shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, completely. And then let me see how this audio turns out. I think we're right at the point where I'm being confronted by two supposed managers at Costco because I refuse to wear a mask at the front desk. But and this is what's going on at the ground level. Like, before any power shuts out, like, I'm just with my family trying to, like, buy some groceries and toilet paper.
You're just doing what you've done that everyone has done.
Can you imagine if it was a true panic? God. If it was a true panic scenario and there was limited stock of everything and I needed this stuff to survive, and you're gonna, like, nitpick me over a fucking mask?
Oh man, watch out for the Gib army when there's really fallout,
right?
Because that's not gonna look pretty.
Let's see if this audio comes through.
What's a power chair? It's a chair that moves on its own. No, I can't. You can't? No, I cannot. I have a medical exemption. I've already talked to the manager about this. Which one? His name is Chris or Mike. Chris? Yeah. Well, this was months ago. After. Okay. Have you guys read the mandate? This is about the county mandate, right? Yeah. Have you read about the medical exemption? Well, this probably, yeah, we use it. Alright, I'll take it. Thanks.
Nice.
So I don't know how much of that was made out, but basically what happened was they presented me with a mask and a visor. I told them I couldn't wear either one. I told them I had a medical exemption. They said, well, there's a requirement to wear it in a high traffic area. And I said, well, have you read the mandate? There's a medical exemption in there. And then they told me it wasn't because of the county mandate, even though I asked if it was.
They literally said
they said it was, and all their signs say that it is. But then they said it's our policy, and that the manager who I had previously spoken to was no longer there. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's your policy to take this? And they said, yeah. And so I took the mask and the visor, and I just put it in my basket, and I, as you can see, I kept walking.
Right, you never put it on.
And nobody bothered me from that point. But as I said previously, I did get to the register, and I noticed the cashier being sort of like accosted by some ninny. It was neither of these guys. It was somebody different, but he was on a radio. And I just found that interesting.
They're probably like,
sad.
This guy spends too much money here. Just let him go.
I would hope. I mean,
it's like,
if I was the manager, that's what I would
say. He was Jewish.
Right. We don't want to be anti-Semitic.
Right.
We might.
We can't be sued under those auspices.
Right.
Okay?
So what if I put this out as a clip and say anti-Semitic Costco tries to prevent
exercise of free religion.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's my next lanyard.
That's our next
lanyard.
That's our next
because
one.
I almost prefer that. I almost prefer it because it's more true. I did have a heart murmur, which I could document. Okay. So I could say I have a cardiac condition that I'm concerned about, which I don't want to take any risks.
I mean, I can do the same thing and say, look, I have psoriasis. I have
absolutely.
It could trigger an eczematic reaction.
I could get an infection and die from a complication related to that.
And are you willing to vouch for all of the materials in this mask in order to compel me to wear one? I don't think so.
No.
So, but I did like the Jedi mind trick at the beginning, because maybe that did scare him.
That I was Jewish?
Yeah, because technically
it felt like it didn't work.
But if she relayed that information to the manager,
he said he was Jewish.
Right.
I almost regretted not pushing that when I was later accosted, because I don't have.
I already told your door person.
But my lanyard doesn't say anything about that. It was a different thing, so I was kind of I went with the medical exemption thing. Yeah. But they, I don't really have much confidence that they would have treated it any differently, because they didn't even listen. They did not even.
No, and again, it's that robotic, just sheep drone sort of.
I'm gonna get fired if I don't say what I'm told to say.
Something, but ultimately, yeah. I mean, are Costco's down in Florida as anal about this? I don't think so.
I doubt it.
It's only in counties that are posturing like they care about people's health.
Yeah.
Through these draconian measures.
Well, let's take a bio break. I really gotta go, and put some music on real quick.
Sweet.
This one here is called the Silent Princess. It's a rare, endangered species.
And we're back. It's your loyal hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant, on this
balmy
New Year's Eve, right?
Eve,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Mm-hmm.
And we did a similar thing a year ago.
That's right.
New Year's Eve episode to close out the year. Talk about where we came from. Talk about the year before and the year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Prognosticating a bit. We were supposed to have a guest on tonight, Sophia Stewart, the alleged original creator of the Matrix and Terminator series. She texted us during our last session and had a family emergency, a sick family member, and had some trouble joining. But we'll rain check with her. We'll hopefully have her on another show. Apologies for that. We'll try to update the thumbnail for this episode and center it around just a Matrix in general.
Right.
For the balance of the show, we're gonna just continue to chill and talk about issues of import. We're gonna do a bit of a Telegram surf. If you haven't already downloaded Telegram, I highly recommend it. Xavier was remarking in the break how he basically gets all of his news from Telegram now. Specifically the Zetetic News Sleuth Telegram, because we have 27 members, but
I think half of them are contributors.
And they post really good stuff. And so you can just scroll through. You can see it on screen. If you're just listening, head over to zetetic.news and see the video component of this, where we're showing the actual Telegram and the different posts, and it will tee off different sorts of discussions. Let's play this clip just to start and sort of kick it off. Billy Gates. Oh, that's just an image, but I know it relates to a video of Bill Gates on the CIA network with Anderson Cooper talking about the potential of taking away Social Security benefits for the unvaxxed. And Bill Gates is
just giddy,
so giddy, and
just
so excited,
so enthusiastic about that.
That's a good suggestion. It's not like I helped inculcate that.
Oh, but
scenario.
Anderson, you're just bending over backwards to really push the envelope. Good for you, young Sith Padawan.
Pat on the head.
Good for you. You're definitely an operative like me. That's why we're talking about this.
We're in this together.
Yeah, and we almost look like related. Look at us kind of like narcissistically mirroring each other's style a little bit.
It's that same trendy Coke bottle glasses look, which anybody who wants to wear a costume of intellectualism, I mean, I'm sure some people just like the style, and there's exceptions to every rule, but man, you see that a lot with like SJWs. What's with the glasses? I see it all the fucking time.
Yeah,
I'll see it. People wearing these same glasses. Does Anderson even have glass in them? Is there glass in them, or is it just the frame?
Or
do they really need? I mean, these guys can both afford LASIK surgery,
right?
To fix their eyesight, and they're gonna wear these glass. It's like a costume.
Absolutely. Well, it's about mirroring the audience, right? So the vast majority of people who probably watch this, have some sort of eye trouble, some sort of issue with computing reality, maybe, and that glasses is maybe one intrinsic part of the feedback loop. Because it's older audiences, I'm sure there's a significant part of the audience that watches CNN that has glasses.
Oh, here's the clip.
Do you think the federal government or state governments, or the very least federal government, should mandate if you want to get on an airplane, you have to be vaccinated? If you want to get Social Security, you need to be vaccinated. If you want to get whatever.
He loves it.
Look at that.
I love it.
Okay, because what just sparked off in his mind is like, okay, well, what does Social Security really represent at this point? It's money. It's money, right? That's the only reason why people would.
That's where the screenshot came from, right there.
Yeah,
is that very moment.
That very moment.
It's like when we detailed Alan Dershowitz talking about the vaccine.
Oh my god! Like, and then the eye bulging mega demon that just creeps out. I mean, it's doing the really slowed down frame by frame stuff. Really reveals a lot of things. A lot of things.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about this.
Oh my god.
The Alex Jones drama is reaching a feverish pitch. I mean, everything from buyer's remorse.
Wow.
To have you seen the domestic violence?
Oh, I did see a little bit about that. lot of train wrecky kind of stuff going
Very
on with
much.
him right now.
Puts the
Unfortunately.
fun in dysfunctional, doesn't it?
Oh, burn.
Hey, that's one from my family. Okay,
It's all good. I mean, honestly, yeah, he's going through a lot of repercussions right now. I mean, the humiliation factor with
my wife on Christmas Eve. Yeah. Very short statement on the arrest of my wife on Christmas Eve for family violence.
Man, I think Alex is overall a good guy, and I just hate that this happened to him on Christmas Eve. Come on.
Resisting arrest. I love my wife. I care about her. And she got on a mix of prescription drugs given to her by her doctor and her psychologist. Had a bad interaction, and she basically blacked out and didn't know who she was. And she was hurting herself and others. And when the police got there, they had to restrain her. And this was a medical issue. The left's turned this into a big thing of, oh, his wife hates him, she beat him up, and all this stuff. That's ridiculous, and that's disgusting, and that's not what's in the police report. That's the left trying to promote family violence and say it's cute if a man is attacked. I'm going to give my wife the rest of her privacy, but the main issue was not the fact that she assaulted me. The issue is that she was completely in another world, and I was worried about her safety. And I needed the police to be involved so there'd be a record of it in case I heard her trying to subdue her. They obviously saw that she was out of her mind, and they tried to subdue her, and she threw two of them off of her, and it was very serious. But I love her. She's not a bad person. Until she went on these psychotropics, she was totally fine. And now it has basically almost wrecked her life. And so again, Big Pharma, thank you so much for all you do.
Oh, ouch.
I hate it has to be such a spectacle, but I mean that's the price you pay for this kind of notoriety, you know.
Exposure.
Easy for me to say through a veil of anonymity, but you know, at the same time, that wasn't my Christmas Eve either. So
well, you know, there's the long-standing conviction that he himself is kind of under a hidden identity, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, who knows? Maybe this is a chain reaction of her uncovering some information.
What's up, Bill Hicks?
What's up, Bill? Hey, man. You're looking real 43 there, 44, however old AJ is supposed to be.
Well, so there's that, and then there's the, what do you call it? I call it buyer's remorse on Trump. So let's listen. I don't know exactly. I haven't listened to this clip, but I've heard Alex address this on his different shows over the last 6 months. I would say there's been a bit of a reversal, and this is, I think, I maintain what I said before, that the Alex Jones, Trump, Joe Rogan nexus, red hat, white hat, black hat question is one of the most important ones in the media landscape of this generation.
Yeah.
Like that we're in now, let's say from 2010 to 2020. Let's just say that snapshot, I think. So this all converging in 2020 with the crazy circus around Trump's reelection, and the subsequent, what would you call it besides buyer's remorse? What do you think is buyer's remorse? Do you think it's like a
endorsement short circuit,
like a cover your ass move? Do you think it's like, do you think Alex's prior,
it's damage control? I would say damage control.
Do you think his Trump bandwagoning was a money-seeking, money-preserving, clout, or was it like a good genuine, hey, we see a potential vehicle in the traditional political system that we could potentially influence, and we're going to try to use our platform to do that in a good way.
But see, that counteracts everything that he's been reporting on since day one, right? I mean, that the whole two-party system was completely bought out. They're controlled opposition. He's on the outskirts, voice in the wilderness. Why would you naively presuppose that you can now, with a big platform, not go in there without,
that's an interesting point, because when Steve Pachunik was on there, he literally said, "You don't understand, Alex, but you are the mainstream media now." And think about what is being said there by Steve Pachunik, of all people, on the Alex Jones show, as if Alex doesn't already know it. Like, how could he become the mainstream media without actually knowing it?
Well, other than
Alex,
the fact that,
if he's smart, if he's as smart as he purports to be, he would already know that.
He probably does.
And he does. And he's probably said, we are the mainstream media. We're the tip of the spear, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, of all of Alex Jones's faults, Trump has to be the biggest one.
Oh, I mean, pretty glaring.
What else could you say is worse?
I mean, backpedaling on Michael Obama, that was a pretty big.
Did he backpedal on that?
Oh yeah.
On him being a trainee.
I was just joking.
Because he didn't want to get Joan Rivers, even though he definitely brought that
into the mainstream talking point, right?
All right, so
but there is good evidence behind that, and it points to what I've talked about many times, which is the occult thespian network, and the basically seconded actor population that are basically intelligence assets, and they operate on a sort of proxied identity basis. And ultimately, it's extremely widespread. It's probably way more widespread than will ever be fully disclosed, because it would show that the whole Shakespearean principle of geopolitics, which is all the world is a stage, is far more literal than would make any modern citizen comfortable.
Right.
That the entire thing is in fact scripted, and that there is always a conflict of interest in reporting the quote unquote facts. And there is no such thing as an honest report when it comes to these actor networks. I mean, it's so widespread that excavating it...
It's automated at this point. It's automated.
It is the AI.
Countless examples of headline versus the news. You see the headline, it's one way, and then you look in the fine details, the fine print, and it's a totally other way. Especially in regards to hospitalization cases... deaths, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. You look at the Google search manipulation, it's insane.
Off the charts.
It's reality
programming.
altering. Reality altering, because it alters the information that people get,
and it's
in a specific way.
That's right.
If it was in a
scripted way,
if it was in a deterministic way, if it was in a based on the search criteria,
right,
then that's one thing. But they've been by successive approximation engineered into a specific direction and agenda.
That's why every single search result is gate kept.
Yeah,
it's directed.
And this was a big awakening moment when I witnessed the mainstream media internet company interlocking cooperation on the Ron Paul presidency. And there are speaking of Matrix, this might be a good clip to bring up. It's an oldie but a goodie. There were GIFs made. I mean, this is like mainstream meme culture. Of Ron Paul.
That's right. His face superimposed on Neo's.
Yes.
blocking the bullets. Yeah, I've definitely seen that.
And hopefully I can pull that up because I think it would be apropos for this episode where we focus on the Matrix, even though our special guest did not show up, because it was a good example, and to me it was a big pivotal moment in my awakening, seeing how truth speaking would cut through all of these huge, seemingly impregnable, impenetrable media gears were turning. How Ron was able to cut through that and still garner a audience with the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's kind of the old guard, you know. He knows a lot of the old Austrian school genuine economic principles that, you know, were poo-pooed out of central bank policy kibitzing, and the paradigm of planned economies that they've wanted since the inception of the Federal Reserve. So he's been a good economic critic since his, you know, early days up into the present.
Unfortunately, his son has not really taken even as hard of a stance as he did in some of the areas of focus that he put his energy.
Yeah, he got some good clicks on grilling Tony Sickle, but
why isn't he in jail? He blatantly lied to Rand.
Yeah.
I mean, if I lie on a traffic case that I proceed pro se, I mean, I could be jailed for penalty of perjury.
Right.
But Fauci can't. He can lie to a senator.
Yeah.
In testimony.
Yeah.
You know, good on Rand for bringing that about, and we're now having a discussion about it. But where's the accountability?
That, and also it's kind of like it's a little chink in the armor. You know, it's like, haha, I got you. You know, but it's not a genuine rug pull.
Right.
You know, it's not disgracing his reputation and career as an authority figure.
You know, because these spin doctors around
Everything.
Fauci, you know, they can be like, oh, he's an ignoramus. He doesn't understand GOF or gain of function or
public health.
I'm the this and I'm the that. You know,
public health. Well, and here's the thing is, it's because the reason why he has been apprehended is that St. Anthony, Lord Darth Fauci, he basically is a higher up member of the deep state than Little Rand. And so Rand can, you know, sling some mud at him, but ultimately it's like hitting the side of a tank. Like, the mud's not really going to do anything. I think the budget that Darth Fauci has overseen cumulatively is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. All if you adjust for inflation every single year from when he's been, and meanwhile he's supposed to be a protector, right, of general public well-being, right? That's what his supposed position is supposed to be about. But you see an astronomical increase in every single disease during his reign. So is that just him being so diligent as to create a bureaucracy to detect all these problems that are within the population? Or is he actively funding things that foment those problems?
He is 81 years old. He is 81 years old. If you're listening to this, ask yourself, do I know an 81-year-old? And what do they do?
Right.
What is their day like? Do they need an early nap? Who the fuck is this guy?
He's a member.
He's an 81-year-old man.
Yeah.
And he's on TV all the time talking about bullshit.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is he? You know? He's 81 years old. How much longer does he have?
Yeah. Well, he's now being, celebrified to such an extent.
You know, he's the highest paid government employee.
Yeah. On paper through the tax plan.
Right. As far as like the wages paid.
Yeah.
Due to a permanent pay adjustment made by, I think, Obama, for his DOD work with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, right near CNN headquarters.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was that? It was developing whatever vaccine is being distributed now. It has nothing to do with COVID, cerveza virus, whatever. It has a lot more to do with the vaccine that's been developed.
Oh, well, yeah. Wasn't it something like the FDA's budget is 75% funded by pharmaceutical firms, I think. So that's
his
called
wife
regulatory
is
capture.
head of bioethics at the NIH.
His quote unquote wife. Have you guys seen pictures of this so-called woman?
I have not.
Dude, pull it up, man. I'm telling you right now, this is another example of transvestigation.
Transvestigation.
Okay. I mean, I'm not even joking. We know this about the Scuzz Army and the elite scumbag. Okay. It doesn't look like very feminine to me, man. You put that woman in a suit just like him. You'd think that they were, business partners.
They creep me out.
I'm telling you, man. And then there's the whole thing about Melinda Gates. Is this Kevin Kline? I mean, come on. Like,
what's going on here?
This is a cult, guys. This is, I mean, the whole, we conquer by deception mantra literally goes all the way into the bedroom, guys. Okay. This is part of the occult thespian thesis that major individuals are initiated into their positions of power because they have to uphold some sort of massive assembly of deceptions.
Yeah.
And it includes all the way to their private life.
We have a commenter here in the chat responding to some of our commentary. Shout out to Lumia Marks. Said, my grandfather was 89 when I met him, still working, going to the gym twice a day. Daniel William Saragelli. He was an inventor and bodybuilder, though. Fauci looks frail. Okay, fair point, right? I mean, we talk about the lifespan question. Are we really meant to live 100 years? Is that really like what we should expect out of
a long life?
A long life, or have we been engineered to live much shorter lives? My point about him being 81 is, we commonly believe that the lifespan that's actually beyond it. He's actually beyond the average lifespan in America, and yet he is regarded as this like great wizard, this great prognosticator of
guardian
of this guardian
of medical truth,
of medical truth, and a gatekeeper of knowledge about how we can get ourselves out of this
attacks
mess.
Against me or attacks
but at the
against
same
science.
time, he's probably 6 years past the average lifespan, and most 81-year-olds are not still working at the gym twice a day like Lumia Marks. They are on their decline after having suffered, decades of intoxication and toxification from all the different facets that we talk about on this show, and most of Congress and the Senate are on a milieu of pharmaceutical drugs to like keep them awake and alert like most of the day. And is this really who we're looking to for all of the guidance that we need to conduct our daily lives? Do I need to wake up every day and hear what Fauci has to say? 81-year-old Fauci, who's got basically a criminal history.
Oh yeah.
Skimming off
death.
the cream of government largesse and
running rampant with that budget with all kinds of draconian experiments
and Franken experiments, which arguably are responsible for war crimes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, he's to me as senile and idiotic as Joe Biden. So get him the fuck out of there, you know. Maybe we should be living 600 years, but not him. He's 81. He's past his prime. You need to get the fuck out, you know.
Well, and it's also just goes to show that it's a mafia. Government is a mafia. This guy is able to just completely run unquestioned. He's like one of the dons.
And so let's go back to this clip of Trump, right? Because Trump got a son who was arguably injured by vaccines, autistic, and has sided previously with like John F. Kennedy, right? Who's very anti-vax, right? Isn't he?
Robert F.
Robert,
Jr.?
my bad. John,
Yeah.
not what? John.
RFK Jr.
RFK, right, Jr. And but yet infamously supported Operation Warp Speed and rammed that through, and has subsequently, in my opinion, you know, if he hadn't already, he turned his back on the country. I mean, without a doubt. But here is I guess this is a mashup from Alex Jones. I don't know if Alex is going to talk, but the interview with Candace Owen was really shameful
because he's just straight up shilling and lying, and it's so just grotesque.
Yeah,
I mean, we've known on CNN that Trump was bought and paid for.
Yeah.
In the early days, really the 90s. Because look at his cabinet appointment of Wilbur Ross. That was the same exact banker that helped bail him out through a Rothschild subsidiary.
Seen as one of the greatest achievements of mankind. We would have had in 1917. Remember the Spanish flu killed perhaps 100 million people. Actually, it ended the First World War because the soldiers were so. A lot of people don't know that the soldiers got so sick. It was a terrible thing. There were no vaccines. There was no anything. I came up with a vaccine, with 3 vaccines. All are very, very good. Came up with 3 of them in less than 9 months. It was supposed to take 5 to 12 years.
That's probably.
This is an emergency Christmas Day warning to President Trump. You are either completely ignorant about the so-called vaccine gene therapy that you helped ram through with Operation Warp Speed, or you're one of the most evil men who has ever lived to push this toxic poison on the public and to attack your constituents when they simply try to save their lives and the lives of others. We're about to lay out the basic, incontrovertible facts that what you told Candace Owens just a few days ago is nothing but a raft of dirty lies.
And more people have died under COVID this year, by the way, under Joe Biden, than under you. And more people took the vaccine this year. So people are questioning how...
Oh, no, the vaccine worked, but some people aren't taking it. The ones that get very sick and go to the hospital are the ones that don't take the vaccine. But it's still their choice. And if you take the vaccine, you're protected. Look, the results of the vaccine are very good. And if you do get it, it's a very minor form. People aren't dying when they take the vaccine.
Recently, Candace Owens attempted to confront you politely, face to face, with the fact that these so-called vaccines are causing a lot of death and illnesses. And you doubled down, saying that nobody has been hurt by these shots, when that is just a flat-out lie. It's on record they cause myocarditis and heart attacks. And then you tripled down on top of that and said that 90% of people in the hospitals around the world have not had the vaccine, when the facts and the statistics show the opposite. In Germany, in the UK, in the US, in Canada, across the world, in places like Israel, the double and triple vaxxed are more than 2 times likely to become sick and to be hospitalized and or die. In fact, a new study came out just this week. Here it is for you to research it, President Trump. Within 3 months, you are twice as likely to become infected by the Omicron variant if you took the Pfizer vaccine. That's because it's erasing your immune system. And that was the plan. Erase the population's immune system and make them dependent on ongoing gene therapies that have to be taken as often as every day. That is the plan. The big pharma takeover of humanity.
Seen as one.
Yeah, that is his angle. I mean, that accords to the whole Rand Paul, there really was a boogie bug from China, kind of narrative. CNN has, of course, explored multiple other possibilities besides that. I think the more convincing one is, did y'all remember the Dark Knight, the second Batman with Heath Ledger as the Joker? And there's that scene where Batman's sort of like overwhelmed, is like, oh my god, I'm dealing with like the most crazy psycho ever. I don't know how to confront this. He's got to want something. He tries to employ sort of rational criminology around the Joker. And Alfred's like, well, he relays this anecdote of how they caught this jewel thief who just stole jewels for fun. And the only way they caught him was to burn down the forest, because they realized that there was not, he just wanted to watch the world burn, basically.
Right.
And I think that a lot of this Frankenscience, pseudoscientific charlatan matrix is an organized insult against the human consciousness and intelligence and dignity. And it's a Lokian assault. It's designed to be a mockery and a joke. And so they just, for the sport of it, they would like to see chaos. They're sort of chaos magicians in a way. And they want to foment chaos any way they can. And create dialectics and controlled results from that chaos. So I really feel like the whole effort and organization around launching this was to just kind of see what would happen. They have that much chutzpah, that much disregard for people, that they've wargamed a result in which full-on chaos could be the ripple effect. And that's certainly the case with the rollout of the sort of spindle, the pricking ourselves on the spindle wheel. It's a spell. It's like it's putting us sort of to sleep in a way as a species by acquiescing and cooperating with this sort of chaotic magic. And I think that really undergirds a lot of this pandemonium, right? And if you notice, the title of this entire episode from March 2020 to the present, if you reverse it, spells Divoc, D-I-V-O-C, which is the inversion of the current title, COVID, right? And in the Hebrew alphabet, I, V, O, and C are actually Y, B, U, and K. And backwards, COVID is Divoc, which in the Hebrew alphabet means Dibuk, which is a demon summoned to create fear of death.
That's what we have.
That's exactly what we have. It's a pandemonium designed to instill fear of death even though the threat itself is probably not real at all. And that it actually is just a mass recategorization of all the things that we've already gotten over.
Is fear itself.
That's right. I really think it's a mass relabeling. You know, when Kellogg's wants to relabel their cereal, they change the packaging. Maybe they change a couple ingredients. When Big Pharma wants to rebrand the things that they use to keep themselves in business, i.e. sickness management, they upend the entire world.
Right.
And that's been done time and time again. And it's really I like to call it the meta cabal, because when you really excavate the hidden interest there, it is in extermination. It is in misanthropic mythologies and fantasies of eradicating life. It's ultimately Thanatoid. It goes back, it's Thanatoid hyperbole, you know? And that's endemic within the structure of this cosmology of bio-Leninism, or control over the human body as a means for improving society. What that really means is organized, plausible deniability frameworks that can eliminate huge amounts of people in a regular clockwork fashion without disposal.
I mean, they're disposing of pilots at United Airlines who've worked for 20 years, working 60, 70 hour a week, traveling around the world, dressing up every motherfucking day because they won't take an experimental injection that's been shown to cause myocarditis, as just a very simple example. So,
one amongst dozens.
So if they're willing to do that to somebody somebody that would previously be said to a child a role model, they're going to do it to anybody. So get ready for that. We got to wrap up this episode. We've been streaming for almost 4 hours.
Oh, snap.
3.5 hours. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're just listening on a podcast platform, check us out, Zetetic.news. You can view the video component of this. You can also become a contributor and earn T-Fuel by restreaming our content. You can also check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, BitTube, and THETA TV, of course.
Sweet.
Appreciate Xavier coming in and being in the studio with us. Sorry we couldn't bring Sophia to the table, but looks like we're going to do a rain check, and we'll have that on a later episode. Also, look out for Jordan Maxwell on a future episode as well. He's agreed to join us on the show, so really look forward to that. And we're also looking to publish our first story on Zetetic Storytime, which you can find on YouTube, and that will be the Flat Earth Plane, or the
Earth Plane.
The Earth Plane by Eric Dubé, a child's book about the flat Earth.
That's
and
right.
We're working on the animation for that, so more to come, as well as integration with the THETA network on our website. Now that the hackathon is over, we're looking at some of the APIs and plugins that have been developed for WordPress that will allow us to, stream independently of YouTube and any other central infrastructure the episodes that have been censored. So check us out, subscribe, and comment if you like us. Hit that like button. Talk to you guys later, and happy New Year.
Absolutely. Go forth brightly into that 2022. Peace out.
All right, that's it.